to Inside Personal Growth Podcast. Deep dive with us as we unlock the secrets to personal development, empowering you to thrive. Here, growth isn't just a goal, it's a journey. Tune in, transform, and take your life to the next level by listening to just one of our podcasts. Well, welcome back to this edition of Inside Personal Growth. This is Greg Voisen, the host of the podcast. And sitting on the other side, up in Santa Rosa, California, is Ofer Niv, and it's spelled N-I-V, first name O-F-E-R. Welcome to the show, Ofer.
Greg, very nice to be with you.
It's nice to be with you. You've got a very gentle energy, and when we spoke and you kind of reached out to us about coming on, we had talked about a book. You do have a book. It's a downloadable book. And so we're going to direct the listeners to that. And his website, just so everybody knows, is Alchemical, Alchemical Flame. And that is where you can learn more about Ofer, his experiences, his courses. There's a section on media with some YouTube videos. There's a video there of him speaking. Now, Ofer, you've got really kind of an interesting background. I mean, when you first go to this website, people can see 4 years of Army commander, 20 years of management in corporate America, what you call wide awakening flight school graduate, spiritual accelerator graduate, and the list kind of goes on and on, computer engineering certificate from UCLA. But you're a spiritual healer and a shaman. How did you get there? From where you
will sound crazy when you say it like that. The thing that probably redirected me most was having been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis while I was in the midst of sort of going higher and higher on a corporate ladder, and living very stressed life. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis after feeling all sorts of tingling in my fingers, and the diagnosis took a little bit, but I didn't like what I was told. I was told that life was going to be shorter probably, and that it's going to get harder. And I really felt like I was going to die. I mean, it was not a good feeling. I remember a trip to Italy that we used to do almost annually, and everything felt like that's the last time. Like, that's the last time that I see this. The food didn't taste as good. And I knew that something had to change. And because I have this rebel in me, I couldn't just listen to what doctors were telling me. And I started to listen to spiritual speakers. And one of them captured my attention. And I started to realize that, life is a lot like being imprisoned. It's a lot like I'm living as if I don't have a choice, as if I'm trapped in a role. The only way to move is move up or forward, and there is nothing I can do about it. And I started to feel this entrapment following me for many years. And I said, okay, now that I see this, I need to understand more about what's going on. Who am I? Why am I feeling suddenly like I'm stuck here? And that started a spiritual journey where I discovered that most of the things we see with our eyes and sense with our senses are not really what's going on. And
That's
the most important one.
pardon me, but did you have like a Satori experience or like a out of body experience as a result of this? I mean, I know you've studied under many spiritual leaders. I mean, people can go to your website and see that, you did the Cindy Dale apprenticeship program. You've done a lot of things, but you're a kind of guy that impresses me is that you kind of beat to the tune of your own drummer. And I think your exploration individually has led you, along with the group work, to do the work that you do with individuals. Would that be correct?
That is very true. I am very practical. I have I have been sort of used to and taught to think with my left brain a lot. And that's what I've been doing most of my life, I would say. And there was always something in me that's new, that there's probably more, but I didn't, it was like I needed to really be hit hard to do more discovery. And as far as seeing something unusual or having an unusual experience, I actually had one, but it wasn't because I was diagnosed, because it was when I was 18 years old. I remember being drafted to the Israeli military, and I grew up in a kibbutz. It's just a lifestyle of a community in Israel. And one of the things that my older brother did and others was you have to go into that elite unit. And so they had tests, and I went through a test, and the test was fitness test, and it was extremely tough. I was not ready for this test. And what happened was I was kind of starting to pass out. I just remember me running on a road, getting up, falling down, getting up, falling down. Like I'm not giving up, but I can't do it. And in the end, I must have passed out and something happened. I mean, some people might call it NDE, but it wasn't a lot of light in this dream. I don't think that I was ready for an ND experience. What I did experience is an infinite ladder that goes up and down. I now tend to think of it as maybe it was something equivalent to Jacob's ladder from the Bible. For me, it was an offering. You can go up, you can go down, but you're never gonna stop climbing. And I actually had this experience where I'm just gonna climb and climb and climb and never stop. And for some reason, it was extremely scary. And I heard all sorts of voices around me, including the crying, that goes with somebody passing, and it was a unique experience. Eventually, I woke up in a hospital, and I put that away. I mean, I thought that just I didn't even want to know what it meant, and so I put it away, and I only started to think about it after I started having other spiritual experiences to understand that was a signal, that was a sign. I was not ready, and the sign showed up again. So I was ready to decipher more of it. And I knew that something was calling, that it was calling to change a way, that instead of going up and down, it's time to just discovering what happens when you actually go up and not just staying in this pattern
Back and forth. So you just keep ascending. Yes.
exactly.
So my question is, how do you, Ofer, put a title of shaman? I know you said spiritual healer, but you say shaman too. You said on your business card it says spiritual healer. But did you do work underneath shamans? Did you study underneath shamans? Did you have that experience, or?
Yeah. So after 1 year of listening and studying with spiritual people, was not shamanic healers, I really realized the difference and the complementary ways between the body, the mind, the soul, the spirit, how these things are different. It's maybe very basic for spiritual people. I did not even bother to think about it. I did not grow up religious, and I had to kind of find my way into figuring out that something is out there that is bigger than me, but I did. And the
You didn't grow up with Judaism?
Judaism, yes, like I had a bar mitzvah, but my parents, especially my father, grew up in an Orthodox Jewish family, and he rebelled at 16. He ran away, joined the military, and did not want to hear of any religious ceremony. So it wasn't only that it wasn't present, it was almost like anti.
I see, because he had a bad experience. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
look, it happens in Catholicism and Christianity and all of them. But question: did you ever get exposed to the Kabbalah, the
On my own.
on your own? Okay.
On my own, I started. So when I had when we had a son, then I started. For example, I wanted to make sure, and we were living in LA at the time. I wanted to make sure. No, I'm sorry, we were living in Portland, Oregon. But I
Mhm.
wanted to make sure that when he grows up, he had a bar mitzvah, and on very religious holidays like high holidays like Yom Kippur, I would take him to places of you know to synagogue. And so there was something in me that got more interested because I heard a lot about the Kabbalah. And actually, just before my wife got pregnant with my son, we had a hard time conceiving. Somebody showed up on our door with Kabbalah books. It's called the Zohar, and said, "You never know. Why don't you buy it?" And
And you did.
short, long, long story short, we got the book. She got pregnant. That was after a long time. Of,
Interesting.
yeah,
Well, it's certainly interesting. Well, look, your website is loaded with information from our listeners. And I think what our listeners probably want to hear from you is about, you know, the alchemical flame. So, really, what is it? And how can someone begin to recognize and connect with it on their own? I like your analogy of the ladder, of basically ascending, not descending. But the other one is the book that you wrote that people can get as a free download. Talks about the 5 realms of healing. Now, you've mentioned just a tad bit, but you call it heart, shadow, magical. Is it Diatha? They
da,
pronounce that right?
da,
Da'a. And
which means knowledge.
okay,
I'll
and you
explain
live
why.
divine. So I think what they'd like to know is, hey, if they come to your website and they really want to work with a spiritual healer and a shaman, what is some of the knowledge and expertise that you bring that could help lift them to this ascending point where they aren't going up and down and up and down on the ladder,
Exactly.
that they're basically ascending? Because, look, we live in a world where the physical realm, I mean, you talk about our mind, body, spirit, emotional connections. They're all interconnected. We're all one. Usually, when you have a Satori experience, it's this connection with everything and everyone, right? And when you have one of those, you really get a feeling of what it's like. You get not only a feeling, you get an experience that you want to change your life. You had one of those. You help people have those, and you help them move away from going down and go up. So explain how you do that.
Yeah, I'll explain. I just want to say that it took a lot for me to decide to change completely from a career into a full-time healer. And I bring together principles, Kabbalistic principles, and also shamanic principles, and probably other spiritual principles into the healing. I mean, I healed myself, not knowing what else to do, of MS. So in 2020, I was no longer taking medications. Last year, my doctor said, you no longer have to have the annual MRIs, which initially I would have to have for like 20 more years. And so I know that something significantly changed, and it's not my imagination. I consider my multiple sclerosis, journey complete, and it came for a reason. And eventually I said, okay, I need to understand more so I can teach others. And that's what I'm doing. I'm functioning as a healer, which I learned from 2 different shamanic healers that I consider very, very good. And I learned Kabbalistic concepts on my own. And so the way I brought it all together, because I had to bring it into something that works for me, is a way that works with physical issues, with mind issues, emotional issues, spiritual issues. For example, somebody that was suffering, what was identified with or diagnosed with stage 4 kidney disease, worked with me and worked with me once, and had the following day another test, and they said it's gone. You don't, and so uh, I was very skeptical when I started. I'm no longer skeptical because I know this thing works. I'm not saying that I'm a doctor. I don't say don't go see a doctor if you have problems, but I'm saying consider and open your mind that there are also other ways for physical, emotional, and spiritual issues. So
Well,
my system,
Ofer, I hate interrupting, but
of course,
these energies come to me, and people have to have a lot of trust in you and confidence in you to say, hey, here's a person that wants to help me see a different way, right? So a lot of people are resistant. It's like, "Oh, no, I don't want to do that." But
no, that was
they
me.
get, yeah, well, they get to a point of, I'm just going to call it desperation. A lot of times, kidney disease, stage 4, cancer, these kind of things. They're looking for alternatives. But I think this whole 5 realms, and you say the heart realm, because much of this dis-ease, I'm going to say dis-ease, E-A-S-E, is a result of a lack of self-love. And I think when you were in this position as a engineer and doing all these other things you were doing in life that had you totally disconnected, and then you got MS, you had disease as a result of being completely stressed, and it manifested, pardon me, this is just my own interpretation, into MS. Now, the way you help people is you had to start loving yourself again. The shamans taught you how to do that, and you help people open up and awaken to the fact that that's one of the bigger steps they need to take. Would that be right, or am I wrong?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Love, the frequency of love, and we're not talking here necessarily romantic love. It's the frequency of divine love. It's a frequency because everything is energy, is what heals. And so really the question is how to bring it in, how to make it effective. What I think I do with my system is helping people remember that and remember who and what they are, because we feel very vulnerable when we don't remember. When we don't remember, we feel powerless. We feel we don't, we're just on the waves of whatever happens to us, and we have no control over where we're going.
Right.
And when we remember, and that's the biggest thing that I do with people, at least initially, is remember what you are. Remember that you are an infinite being that is limitless, that is always there, that is not going away no matter what's happening, that is not broken, that doesn't need to be fixed, that is already whole. But are you going to remember it or not? And so we're having processes that are taking us exactly to these places. And you mentioned the heart realm. Before we go to the heart realm, there's this concept of the alchemical flame. That's the name of the entire process. The alchemical flame is what happens when you remember what you are. There is a Kabbalistic story that tells that the divine, there was just there was just wholeness, there was just oneness. But the nature of it is loving. Love wanted to find something else. So the divine condensed itself a little bit to make room for something else that can receive the love. When this vessel received the love, it was too much, because the divine love is infinite. So it broke in, the vessel broke in, and the sparks filled up the world. So now everybody and everything in the world is having the divine spark. And our job is sort of to find our way back with that spark into the flame and into the oneness of the divine. And that's my help, is to find that, to help you find that spark inside of you, and then growing it into that alchemical flame. It's a transformational flame when you remember what it is, because it will help you remember, I am not a victim. I am not weak. I'm not limited. If I remember that, and there's always a choice. There's always a choice.
Well, it is, as you said it earlier. I think, there's been a term that's been used, and all my listeners have heard me say that ego is edging God out. Now, there has to be a spiritual side. I'm looking at your pictures behind you. Now, I'm not certain if the one to the right of me is the tree of life, and it doesn't matter if it is or it isn't, but in the Kabbalah, there is a tree of life. And it kind of looks like it could be over. This takes me to this shadow realm that you talk about, because you have the heart realm, the shadow realm, the five realms. The shadow realm has been talked about many times on this show, but it's where many people are afraid to go. What makes this realm so powerful, and how can you help people safely navigate or work with those shadow realms?
The shadow realm, which I could have called the dark realm, because it's probably more appropriate, but
Yeah.
I thought that's already scary enough to call it the shadow realm, so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
And the shadow realm is the place where we have our gifts hidden. So if you don't go into that realm, you might, you can call it the things that we suppress, the things that we don't want to connect to, the things that we repress, and we don't have access to because we don't want to go there, hold our gifts. And these gifts, they could be trapped inside of traumas. They could be trapped inside of what I call dark interferences. These are kind of energetic binds or attachments. And I know that, many people don't know what it means, but just very quickly, when two people are connected emotionally, for example, parents and a child, there are sometimes these energetic cords that form. And if they're not working in harmony, it could be that one side is literally absorbing the energy of the other through these cords. And so we're looking at family, ancestral-based cords, where family has a history, say, of feeling, don't show your feelings. You're not supposed to show your feelings. Or you're not, or everybody feels somehow abandoned. There are patterns in families, and these things are moving not only with genetics, also with the epigenetics, and I believe in other ways that connect feelings that scientists just don't know yet. And then there are the karmic, the past lives of the soul that also bring wounds into us. So we have soul wounds. In the shadow realm, what we do is we go into these old traumas, which are trapped because we don't know how to remove trauma from us automatically. I think people and elephants don't know how to do it because the other animals just shake it off. We don't know how to do it. And so what we do is we lock them in something that looks like a bubble energetically. But this bubble is not really protecting, because every time something triggers, it's being triggered again. And so what we're doing is we're looking at these traumas, and the reason they're like round is maybe because of the similar. It's similar to a bullet that goes into the body and then has a path through the body and is being lodged somewhere in the body, and we're removing it. We're removing it, and all that can be done with the alchemical flame. The alchemical flame is a wonderful tool, because when you remember who you are and what you are, and you remember that power, you can feel it actually dissolving stuff like curses, contracts, vows that we make. We made a vow in some lifetime to never be that person, to never do this or never be that. Then we died, The vow doesn't go away just because we died. And so it comes back in another life. And it's a lesson to keep on learning until you, oh, that's what's going on. Okay, now let's dissolve it. Let's undo the contractual agreement. And all this stuff is happening in the shadow realm. So traumatic memories and all sorts of other interferences, including interdimensional things, abduction memories, all that is there. So yeah, you don't want to go there, but you know what? There are beautiful gifts that are locked in that place that if you can find the openness to go there, when you work with me, you know that you are protected. You go there, you find the gifts, you release what's blocking the gifts from being seen, and that's it. We're done. It doesn't have to take long, but it does require acceptance or allowing. I don't believe that any healing can happen for me helping somebody else if their spirit is not allowing, if their soul is not ready. So
Oh,
there
yeah,
has to
most
be a
definitely.
balance.
And I was thinking as you were speaking, you were talking about reincarnation, our past lives, and something triggered in me like Akashic records, because I've done so many interviews on here with people who've written from Hay House to Sounds True around Akashic records. And it is fascinating. I don't know how much of it I'm a believer of Akashic records, but I do believe in what you're saying because you also describe this work as in your thing you said heart shadow magical realm. And this is like the space of infinite possibility. That I do totally believe in. How does the manifestation truly work in the framework? Because you're talking about this alchemical flame where the sparks were parts and the alchemical flame is the whole. How do we know when we're aligned with our soul's desire? Because when our soul is truly being fed, that is the alchemical flame. But I think so many people are separated from their soul. They're not separated, they just don't recognize it. Let me put it a different way. They don't even recognize it's there. It's almost like it's almost like the invisible to them. How do you make it visible to them and create feeling for them about it?
Yeah. I know that it is hard to know whether, if you believe enough that something will happen. And I'd like to just consider willingness. Just consider willingness instead of the effort of believing in something very strongly and then trying to force your way to something. Be willing and open. What happens with the magical realm is it's like multiple realities, and in quantum physics, it's not a new term. It has been around multiple universes for a long time. The way esoteric tradition sees it, these universes, they're particles, waves, but they interact with each other. And so what I do in the magical realm is show you how to go into that other reality, change that reality, it will change you. So we use it for healing, for example. You can be seen on, let's say, the astral realm. It's one of the layers of multiple realms that are ascending all the way up to the divine realm. But the astral layer, you can go there, find something that looks like a landscape, that looks like mountains and forests and running water. And what's so unique about it is it's a representation of you in this world. And what happens when you start making changes there, you might experience change here in your life. And so this is just an example. You talked about Akashic records. They don't work much with the Akashic records, but I like the Book of Life, which is similar. But what it is, it's a representation of how the divine sees you. And that's the book of your life. What would it be like if you lived your life as a divine being and you knew that you are a divine being? What would life be like? Because there is also a book of, you can call it a book of regrets or a book of shadows. These are the things that, we did do, we didn't want to do, happened to us. So these are things that we can clear out of our life. We can recognize them because they're also written. And that's another part of the Akashic record. But I'm specifically interested in what happened if we knew we are divine beings. What would this book of life look like? And that's, there is actually a place in the magical realm that I call the library. And it's not my invention. It has been there for hundreds, if not thousands of years. But we go visit the library and start looking at the book of life and start looking at what is supposed to be my journey, my soul purpose. What am I here to do? And so there is a discovery here. And it's not in stone, but it is but the question is, what aligns you with your divine nature, as opposed to just what my ego wants. Is, why am I here from a divine perspective? Because when we try to work from the ego, we're creators. I mean, we co-creating our reality. So when we want something, we can create it. But if we create it from ego, it's not necessarily aligned with what we want, and maybe it's not going to take us where we want to go. But I love the idea of you align with the divine will, and that's happening really mostly on the divine level. But when you align with the divine will, then you let creation sort of stream through you.
Well,
Then
through you.
try to do
Yeah.
something very hard.
You have, I mentioned this before, but I'll say it again for the listeners. Like, look, many things in the realms, in the spheres of existence that we think are visible are only invisible because we have not made them visible. They can become
true.
visible in our mind, right? So it's like physics, right? And people talk, well, the desk is hard, but really is it hard? Because it's atoms, molecules. And if you literally could, you could put your hand through it, right? There's a lot of things. So you, having your background in engineering, understand these things, quantum physics. You understand all of this. But I want to get to this, and I want to pronounce this right. DA, ATH realm. What is it?
Yeah.
Dahan realm. And in your little book that's downloadable, and I want to mention this to the audience, they can get this. It seems pretty esoteric. Now, what role does it play in the healing process, and how can the void, which is what we've just talked about, that visible, invisible, become a gateway rather than something to fear? Because here's the reality for me. Stepping through the veil to the other side, as you said, you woke up in the hospital, it wasn't your time, you saw the stairway going up and going down, and you figured you would take it up. A lot of the listeners haven't had that experience. So they're coming to you in pain, because I think the Buddha has always said this, and rightfully so. There's pain. Everybody's going to have pain, but suffering's a choice. So the choice is the result of how our mind is wired and programmed to make the choice. What can you do on this particular realm to help people
Great
not
question.
fear that?
Yes. So what you just said,
It was a long question, but it was
it was a great question, and I just hope that I'll remember it. The choice that we make in our mind, I'd love to suggest that the heart is a better place to make choices. And if you look up the Heart Math Institute, you'll get a lot of information about it. But what happens is we have the duality in the head between the left and the right side of the brain, and between good and bad and thought loops. And the heart shows us what is aligned with us. And so there's always a choice, but I'd rather make that choice. And I love that there is a choice. I think free will is wonderful. I'd love it to happen from a heart perspective. So here's what that does to help you with this. You don't need to know anything esoteric to use that. There are two principles that you want to know. One is, I agree to accept that there is something bigger than me. You can call it the divine, you can call it the universe, you can call it I don't know what. But I accept this highest frequency of that thing, which I call grace or love. I accept it.
Mhm.
So first, accept divine love. And the other principle is surrender your solution. Surrender your solution, because we all think we have to do it by ourselves. This is one of the limiting beliefs that I love to help people dissolve in the heart, that it's all on us. We're the only one who end up needing to do it, or nothing else will happen. So when you when you agree to surrender your solution, the bridge of da'at, which is, by the way, knowledge or knowing in English, just unfolds in front of you. You can imagine the red carpet unfolds. Accept divine love, surrender your own solutions, and then you move into the divine realm. In the divine realm, you simply align. So we have our need. We think we know what we need, right? We think we know we need to heal this pain, or to get this money in the bank, or do this or do that. And then there is the true need, which might not be the same need. And I call it the divine need. How do we align with that? How do we find that true need? The first thing is know what the need is.
Why do
But
we over fight surrender? So the question is really this. I think what you just said, I need the money in the bank, or I need the car, or I need the house, or whatever it is, because we know much of that is driven by ego. But there's a basic fundamental need. I've talked about this, Richard Barrett. Once you get past $60,000-$70,000, you really don't need much more than that. Once you have a house and food, you don't really need much more. Nothing's going to make you any happier, whether you have a bank account with $80 million in it or $50 billion in it, right? Because most of those people I've heard, I have no experience, they're actually kind of miserable, right? Because they're always running around trying to protect what they've acquired. So it isn't. Now, I think you're a guy who believes in flow. Let things flow through you. Let things release. Trust in spirit, right? Which brings me to this divine realm. You talk about unity and oneness, okay? How does this healing, because of people coming to you for healing, whether it's emotional healing or physical healing or whatever kind of healing it might be,
Right.
Contribute to collective healing on a spiritual level? Let me reframe it. The divine realm you talk about is unity and oneness. That means that's the alchemical flame. That's boom. I'm ignited, right? I'm like this right now because I'm not that spark anymore that's out there by myself trying to figure out because I got to do it. I now believe in this higher power. I get that. So here's the big question. How does healing ourselves contribute to healing on this larger spiritual level where we feel we're one with everything?
there are several answers, but nicely they're simple. So there's a principle that whatever you are, whatever you experience inside of you, you radiate out. You can't help it, really. Even if you want others not to notice, we all have radars. We feel the other. When you lift your experience, when you feel healthy, when you feel joy, when you feel peace, you radiate it out. When you do that, you help people around you. Then the whole idea of being in the divine realm is you are not God, but you know that you are an aspect of God, and so is everybody else, and we're all linked. We're all linked. What does it mean? It means that when I have a problem, somebody else to some degree have this problem too, because we are linked. I, as a healer, know that if somebody comes to me with a problem, to some degree, it's my problem. If I solve my problem, I help solve their problem. We are linked. There is just no way around it because we are part of the oneness. If we learn how to heal ourselves and we can help others to help ourselves too, it's one and the same. When two hearts connect, one receives the healing, the other receives it too. There is no win-lose here. There is only win-win by healing either the other or yourself. And that's the connection. I could not hear you.
It's okay. Sorry. I said, I believe that you give people quite a gift by working with you. I can already tell that you have the wisdom to listen to your own heart and to follow your own guidance, which is so important. And, you've developed this model, which we've talked about, the 5 levels in this alchemical flame journey. But as you guide people through kind of this multi-dimensional healing experience, what's the one truth that you want every listener and viewer of this podcast on YouTube and the ones listening on iTunes and Spotify to remember from you, your book, your life's work, and really what would it be? Because a lot of people coming to you for healing, and I would think that maybe it's for physical healing. And it might be a lot for emotional healing, but it is for physical healing because of your MS, and they know that you healed yourself from that. So what do you want people to remember from this today, Ofer?
Your largest gifts that you don't even know yet about are in your biggest issues. I know that my kindness, I know that my sensitivity, I know that my compassion, where sometimes were perceived as a problem in the corporate world, were actually the biggest gifts that were waiting to be discovered. I know that you have gifts, and when you feel powerless, just remember it. You're not powerless. You're not a victim. You're not broken. You are whole, but you need to remember. You want to remember this, and that's what the alchemical flame helps you do. It's not complicated, but that's the one most important thing to know, is that you have your gifts waiting to be discovered, why you're here, your sole purpose, that will help you heal on all levels, not just physical, but on all levels.
Well, the Alchemical Flame is where people need to go, and it's alchemicalflame.com. We're going to have a link to that. And when you go to the top of it, you'll see messages from his clients. You can book an appointment directly with him. Is the first appointment with you, is it complimentary, or do they just to kind of get to know you, or how do you work?
What I'd like to suggest is 2 things. First, on the homepage, when you do alchemicalflame.com, is go to the bottom of the page and subscribe to my newsletter, because then you'll know when my next class is happening, when the next free group journey is happening. And then I'd like to suggest that I don't do pre-consultations anymore because there's too much of that and not enough time. But I offer 30 minutes free group journey every week. And this is a healing journey. I mean, the focus is on healing, and healing and manifesting are 2 sides of the same coin. So if you need to manifest something, if you need to heal something in you, come to these free journeys, and you'll find the registration on the website.
So they can register for that, and that is under services.
Under services.
Yes. Appointments. Is that right?
Under services, it's a drop down, and there is, I believe, a bi-weekly group journey or something like that.
Oh, I see it. So, folks, just so you know, it's under services, and then you go to Alchemical Flame Journey. There you see 30-minute inner guided journeys, discover the power of self-heal. And it says Wednesday, May 14th, 11 a.m. That's the next one. You can book that, correct? That's where it is?
You can
Okay.
book that every other Wednesday. And on the
Amazing.
homepage, if you subscribe, you receive the free book, but you also have, I think you also give the free book, especially to your listeners, in another way, right?
Well, we basically said subscribe to the newsletter, so we want everybody to know that's on when you go to the homepage. There you can just click the button to subscribe to the newsletter.
Right.
And you actually sent me the book. So can they download this little book from the website?
Yeah, they do. Well, they can't download it, but they can subscribe, and then they receive.
I got it. Okay.
And then they receive the book.
Okay. So this is the deal. He's offering you to subscribe to his newsletter. And then when you get the first email back, there will be a link to the book, or the book will be on there and you'll be able to get it, correct?
Yeah. And if you have any questions, email ofer@alchemicalflame.com and you'll get an answer.
Okay. Well, Ofer, honestly, it's truly a pleasure having you on as a shaman, as a healer, a spiritual healer, helping people find this alchemical flame. I think is so important. Loved our discussion about the Kabbalah. I'm sure that in your work, in your shamanic journey, this Kabbalistic wisdom that you're using, you might even be using color, light, and sound as well, and vibratory attunement.
I do.
So if you're helping people get to that vibratory level so that they can actually transmute some of those issues, I think you're doing excellent work. So blessings to you. Thank you, my friend, so much.
Thank you, Greg. It has been such a pleasure. Thank you for your smart, clever, beautiful questions.
Thank you so much.